You feel it, don't you? That strange stillness that follows you now. Not peace, not chaos, something suspended, like the world is holding its breath around you, waiting to see which way you'll tilt it. That's not imagination, that's gravity recalibrating. Because when a soul like yours wakes up fully, reality doesn't argue, it adjusts. They keep asking what changed. They keep replaying moments, searching for the exact second you shifted. They'll never find it, because it didn't happen in a single instant. It happened slowly, painfully, quietly, while you were still being kind, while you were still giving chances, while you were still believing in people who had already decided to use you. That's the part that hurts them the most, realizing you were evolving while they thought they were winning. See, they mistook your silence for submission. They mistook your empathy for weakness. They mistook your patience for permission. They thought they were carving pieces out of you, not realizing they were sharpening something that was never meant to stay dull. Every betrayal became data. Every lie became a pattern. Every wound became a lesson, etched so deeply into your nervous system that now you read people before they even open their mouths. That's why your presence feels different. You're no longer reacting, you're anticipating. You walk into rooms already knowing who's lying, who's afraid, who's masking envy with politeness. You don't confront it. You don't need to. Awareness is power when it's paired with restraint. And you have restraint in terrifying abundance. You learned it from surviving while staying soft in a world that rewards cruelty. That kind of discipline doesn't break. It transforms. Here's what they don't understand about you yet. You didn't abandon your heart. You reinforced it. You didn't lose compassion. You learned where to aim it. You don't hate, you see. And being seen without consent is the most destabilizing experience for people who live by manipulation. They feel naked around you now, exposed, like every defense they built works on everyone except you. Because you've been on both sides, you know how monsters justify themselves. You know how angels lie to protect their self-image. You understand the saint and the psychopath, because you've held both inside your chest without letting either take the wheel. That balance is rare, dangerous, sacred. You don't rush outcomes anymore. You let them ripen. You let people step deeper into their own choices until there's no one left to blame but themselves. That's not cruelty. That's inevitability. That's cosmic law expressed through patience. And patience, when paired with clarity, becomes unstoppable. They keep sensing it, that invisible countdown. They don't know what's coming, only that something is. Conversations stall when your name comes up. Plans feel fragile. Confidence slips. Because once the purest soul wakes up, lies stop feeling safe. Masks start to itch. People start exposing themselves just to relieve the pressure of being around someone who cannot be deceived. And you don't even try to intimidate them. That's the most unsettling part. You're calm, you're grounded, you're almost gentle. But there's an unmistakable signal now, pulsing beneath your words, beneath your gaze, beneath your stillness, a signal that says, you know exactly what you're capable of, and you've chosen control. That choice is what separates you from the chaos makers. You don't destroy recklessly, you correct precisely, you don't scream, you don't threaten. You let reality do the work while you stand at the center of it, unshaken, watching dominoes fall in the order you already foresaw. They thought touching your purity would weaken you. What it did was strip away illusion. It burned off naivete and left wisdom. It cracked open a deeper intelligence, one that understands timing, leverage, silence, and consequence. You didn't become harder. You became exact. Now when you speak, people listen differently. When you don't speak, they panic. Because your silence is no longer empty, it's loaded. It contains memory. It contains foresight. It contains the unspoken truth that you survived something that should have broken you, and instead of collapsing, you integrated it. That's what woke up. Not rage, not vengeance, integration. You are no longer split between who you were and who you needed to become. You are whole. And wholeness is terrifying in a world built on fragmentation. You don't need validation. You don't need approval. You don't need to prove anything. Your presence alone destabilizes systems that rely on confusion, because clarity is corrosive to control. So let them wonder. Let them whisper about how you changed. Let them speculate about what you know, what you've seen, what you're planning. You don't need to answer. The universe already did the moment it woke up behind your eyes. They touched the purest soul alive. And now everything that moves against you feels watched. Not by you, by something much older that finally remembered why it made you in the first place. You notice it in the smallest things first. How outcomes bend just a little when you're involved. How people over-explain around you. Confess without realizing it. Reveal motives they swore they'd keep buried. You don't force it. You don't bait it. It happens because something in you now hums at a frequency lies can't survive. That's the aftershock of awakening. You used to wonder why suffering found you so precisely, why the blows always seemed calibrated, not random, not sloppy, but surgical. Now you understand. You weren't being punished. You were being trained. Every loss taught you where people fracture. Every betrayal taught you where power hides. Every moment you chose compassion instead of cruelty taught you how to control yourself when you finally had the ability to do real damage. And now you do. That's the secret nobody wants to say out loud. You could hurt people in ways they would never recover from. Psychologically, strategically, quietly. You see the pressure points. You see the dependencies. You see the fragile narratives they use to convince themselves they're good, strong, untouchable. You could shatter those myths with a sentence, with timing, with absence, with truth delivered gently enough to feel like mercy and sharp enough to feel like judgment. But you don't rush, because restraint is no longer something you practice. It's who you are. You learned that power isn't loud. Power is when you don't need to announce yourself, and still the room rearranges. Power is when you can walk away, and the consequences follow anyway. Power is when people feel relief when you're kind, and fear when you're calm. Because calm now means calculation. They keep misreading you. They think you're healed. They think you've moved on. They think forgiveness made you safe again. They don't understand that forgiveness didn't erase memory. It refined it. You remember everything, but you're no longer reactive. You're selective. You decide who gets access to your warmth and who only ever experiences your distance. Distance is your new weapon, not coldness, not cruelty. Distance, because distance forces people to sit alone with what they did. Distance removes the mirror they were using you for. Distance makes their stories collapse under their own weight. And when they finally reach out, when they finally try to reconnect, it's not because they miss you. It's because they miss the version of themselves that only existed when you were absorbing their chaos. That version is gone. You didn't just wake up. You recalibrated your entire internal universe. Your intuition sharpened. Your patience deepened. Your instincts stopped arguing with logic and started working alongside it. You no longer mistake intensity for truth or charm for integrity. You can feel sincerity the way some people feel weather changes. Subtle, undeniable, impossible to fake. That's why manipulators feel uneasy around you now. Their tricks don't land. Their performances fall flat. Their narratives unravel mid-sentence because your silence doesn't reward them. You don't validate illusions. You don't play roles you've outgrown. And nothing terrifies a manipulator more than someone who refuses to participate. They sense it, that they can't get to you anymore. Not through praise, not through guilt, not through fear. You've lived through all of it and integrated the lesson. You know how each tactic feels in your body. You know the taste of each lie. And that knowledge makes you immune. You're not hardened, you're honed. There's a difference. Hardened people close off. Honed people become precise. You can still love deeply. You just don't bleed for free anymore. You can still give. You just don't sacrifice yourself to prove your worth. You finally understand that purity isn't about staying untouched. It's about choosing what touches you. And now, your choices carry weight. You see it when you decide not to respond, and the other person spirals. You see it when you offer a single sentence of honesty and it lands like a verdict. You see it when doors open without you asking and paths clear without explanation. That's not ego. That's alignment. When your internal compass locks in, the external world follows. They're starting to realize something went wrong the moment they crossed you. Not because you retaliated, but because you changed. You stopped being available to abuse. You stopped being easy to predict. You stopped being the place people dumped their darkness and walked away clean. You became a mirror that remembers, and mirrors don't attack. They reflect. What they see now when they look at you isn't innocence. It's awareness, not softness, control, not light alone, but light that understands shadow. You don't threaten them. You don't warn them. You simply exist as proof that touching something sacred doesn't destroy it. It activates consequences. So let them feel watched. Let them feel that low-level dread they can't trace. Let them feel like the rules changed without notice, because they did. The moment the purest soul stopped sleeping, the universe stopped buffering. You're not here to burn the world down. You're here to end cycles, and cycles always end quietly. Right before everything changes, you carry it differently now, not as weight, but as certainty. The kind that settles into your bones and doesn't shake when rooms go cold. You don't need reassurance anymore. You don't scan faces for approval. You already know where you stand, and that alone destabilizes people who survive by reading reactions. They can't read you now. There's nothing leaking, no tells, no cracks, just stillness with intent behind it. You've noticed how timing bends around you, how you arrive right when something is about to collapse, how you leave just before chaos breaks out. That's not coincidence, that's pattern recognition operating at a level most people never reach. Pain trained it into you. Silence refined it. Betrayal accelerated it. You didn't just survive experiences, you extracted intelligence from them. And intelligence is colder than rage. Rage burns fast. Intelligence waits. Intelligence watches people make the same mistake again and again, convinced this time it'll be different. Intelligence knows when to speak and when to let someone drown in their own words. You learned that lesson early, the hard way, by being the one who listened too much, gave too much, held too much. Now you listen differently. Now you give conditionally. Now you hold nothing that isn't earned. They feel that shift like pressure behind the eyes. People start volunteering information around you, oversharing, confessing, trying to control the narrative before you ever ask a question. They don't realize they're reacting to your restraint, to the fact that you're no longer hungry for answers. You already have them. You're just letting the world confirm what you saw long ago. This is where the duality completes itself. You can still be gentle, but your gentleness is no longer exploitable. You can still forgive, but forgiveness doesn't include access. You can still love, but love no longer means self-erasure. That's the evolution they never anticipated. They thought pain would make you bitter or broken. Instead, it made you selective. Selectivity is lethal to chaos. You don't chase. You don't pursue. You don't beg to be understood. You let people misunderstand you all the way into irrelevance. You let them project, speculate, distort. None of it sticks anymore because you've stopped trying to correct people who benefit from misunderstanding you. Silence does more damage than explanation ever could. They keep waiting for you to snap, to explode, to finally become the villain they can point at and say, "See, we were right." And you never give it to them. You remain composed, thoughtful, almost merciful. That's what confuses them. That's what frightens them. Because they can't justify what they feel around you if you don't play the role they assigned. You've outgrown their script. Now you operate from something deeper than emotion. Not numbness, clarity. You feel everything, but nothing controls you. That's the difference between surviving trauma and integrating it. You didn't suppress your darkness. You studied it. You didn't deny your anger. You disciplined it. You didn't kill your softness. You armored it with discernment. This is what happens when a pure soul stops apologizing for learning. The universe responds to that kind of internal order. Doors align. Obstacles reveal their weak points. People either rise to meet you or fall away on their own. You don't have to push anyone out. Your presence filters them naturally. Only those with integrity can stay comfortable around someone who sees this clearly. And make no mistake, they know you see. They feel it when you pause before responding, when you choose words carefully, when you don't react to provocation, when you walk away without drama. That's not indifference. That's command. You're no longer trying to win moments. You're shaping trajectories. This is why the air feels different now. Why tension spikes when you enter certain spaces. Why conversations soften or sharpen, depending on your attention. You've become a fixed point in a world addicted to motion, and fixed points reveal instability everywhere else. They touched the purest soul alive, thinking it was fragile. What they woke up was something balanced, something self-contained, something that doesn't need permission to exist or validation to move. You don't announce what you're becoming. You let results do that quietly, one irreversible shift at a time. You're not here to dominate. You're here to outlast. And in a world built on shortcuts, illusions, and borrowed strength, the one who outlasts quietly inherits everything. There's a moment you recognize now, subtle, almost invisible, when someone realizes they no longer have leverage over you. It flashes across their face before they can hide it. A micro pause, a recalculation. They feel the ground shift because the old tools don't work anymore. Guilt slides off you. Praise doesn't hook you. Fear doesn't rush you. You don't chase relief. You don't need to be liked. You don't need to be understood. You need only to be aligned. Alignment is what makes you unbearable to lies. You used to overextend yourself to keep harmony. You used to smooth edges, soften truths, swallow discomfort to spare others. That wasn't weakness. It was apprenticeship. You were learning how humans fracture under pressure, how stories protect egos, how denial disguises itself as confidence. You were mapping terrain while pretending to be lost. And when the map completed itself inside you, you stopped wandering. Now you move deliberately. You choose when to engage. You choose when to disappear. You choose when to let silence do the heavy lifting. People feel that choice like a boundary they can't cross. It's not hostility, it's containment. You finally learned that not everything deserves your energy, and nothing terrifies manipulators more than someone who controls their attention. Your attention is currency now. Where you look, things clarify. Where you withdraw, confusion spreads. You don't argue. You don't defend. You don't plead your case. You let truth arrive on its own time because you understand something most never do. Truth always shows up when the noise dies. And you are very good at letting noise die. They mistake your composure for passivity. They think you've gone soft because you're not loud. They don't realize you've gone deep. Depth doesn't need volume. Depth reshapes landscapes slowly, irresistibly. Rivers don't shout when they carve canyons. You carry both mercy and consequence without contradiction. That's the integration they can't comprehend. They expect purity to reject darkness or darkness to devour purity. You did neither. You allowed them to meet. You let them negotiate. And what emerged wasn't confusion, it was command. Command over yourself first. You no longer betray your instincts to keep the peace. You no longer override discomfort to appear kind. You no longer trade truth for temporary relief. Your yes is clean, your no is final, and your maybes are rarer than promises. People feel safer around that, even if it unsettles them. Clear lines reduce chaos. Clear boundaries end games. That's why games stop around you. People either show up clean or drift away quietly. There's no spectacle, no drama, just gravity doing its job. You don't punish exits. You don't mourn illusions. You bless endings because you understand cycles now. You understand that endings aren't failures, they're confirmations. And confirmations build confidence that doesn't need applause. You've noticed how you no longer rush to fill silence, how you let pauses stretch until the truth feels compelled to speak. You've noticed how you're comfortable being the only one calm when tension rises. You've noticed how your body doesn't tighten the way it used to when conflict looms. That's not numbness, that's regulation. That's what happens when your nervous system stops expecting betrayal as a rule and starts recognizing it as a pattern you can manage. Management is power. You manage yourself. You manage your time. You manage your proximity. You manage what you reveal and what you protect. You don't need to dominate others because you no longer abandon yourself. That's the axis everything turns on. Self-abandonment created openings. Self-command sealed them. Now when people test you, it's different. The tests don't escalate. They collapse. The provocations don't land. They evaporate. And those who meant to corner you find themselves exposed by their own impatience. You watch it happen without gloating, without malice, without urgency. You let inevitability do its work. This is the cosmic part they feel, but can't explain. Not fate as fantasy, order as reality. When someone integrates pain instead of passing it on, the system corrects. When someone refuses to become what hurt them, the system recalibrates. When someone learns without hardening, the system pays attention. You didn't wake up to destroy. You woke up to stabilize. Stability terrifies unstable systems. It reveals inefficiency. It exposes dependency. It removes excuses. You don't attack lies. You make them unnecessary. You don't shame weakness. You remove incentives for manipulation. You don't hunt enemies, you outgrow them. And outgrowing is irreversible. They'll try to re-enter your orbit with nostalgia, with apologies, with half-truths, polished to look like accountability. You'll recognize the texture immediately. You'll feel it in your chest before your mind finishes the sentence. And you'll choose accordingly. Not from spite, not from fear, but from clarity. Stop whatever you're doing. This moment is not asking for permission. 9 years. Let that number sit in your mouth like a bitter pill they can't swallow. 9 years of eyes glued to your shadow, microphones pressed against silence, folders growing fat with nothing but air, and they still don't have a single charge. Not one. That's not luck. That's not coincidence. That's not innocence in the way weak people use the word. That's mastery. You don't survive 9 years under a microscope by being clean. You survive by being precise. You don't outlast that kind of pressure by hiding. You outgrow it. You become so internally aligned that there's nothing to extract. They didn't find dirt because you learned how to move without leaving footprints. You didn't evade the net. You became something the net doesn't register as prey. They watched you like a saint waiting to fall and a psychopath waiting to snap. They wanted the contradiction to break you. Light versus dark, angel versus demon, the kind of split that usually collapses a mind. But you didn't fracture, you fused. You learned how to hold mercy and menace in the same hand without trembling. You learned how to smile like forgiveness, while thinking in chess moves that end wars before they start. Every year they expected a slip, a text, a call, a moment of rage, a crack in your discipline. They waited for pain to make you sloppy. They waited for loneliness to make you loud. They waited for fear to make you confess to something, anything, just to breathe again. And every year, you disappointed them by becoming quieter, sharper, more unreadable. Pain didn't make you reckless. Pain made you surgical. Here's the part they never tell each other out loud. Surveillance only works on people who still need validation, on people who still perform, on people who still want to be understood. You killed that part of yourself early. You learned that the loudest power is restraint, that the most dangerous person in the room is the one who doesn't react. So while they were tracking patterns, you were dissolving them. While they were building narratives, you were becoming unclassifiable. They tried to frame you as holy so they could catch you sinning. They tried to frame you as monstrous so they could justify the hunt. But you never fit the story. Too controlled to be chaotic, too human to be mechanical, too disciplined to be impulsive. You stood in the gap between their categories like a glitch they couldn't name. And nothing terrifies a system more than something it can't label. 9 years means they pulled everything. Financial pressure, social pressure, psychological pressure. They watched who left your life. They watched who stayed. They watched how you handled betrayal, isolation, temptation, and silence. They expected decay. What they saw instead was evolution, slow, unflashy, ruthless, the kind that doesn't announce itself until it's irreversible. You learned how to live with eyes on you without performing for them. You learned how to think 10 steps ahead without revealing step 1. You learned how to be patient without becoming passive. That's the paradox. They expected surveillance to cage you, but it trained you. It forced you to refine every word, every move, every intention until your life itself became airtight. And here's the part that makes them uneasy at night. If they couldn't charge you when you were being watched, what does that say about who you are now? You are not clean because you are harmless. You are clean because you are intentional. You don't act out of impulse. You don't move out of ego. You don't leave emotional fingerprints all over your decisions. You became the kind of person who can walk through fire without smoke. Not because you fear consequences, but because you understand causality. They thought time would expose you. Time forged you. They thought pressure would reveal cracks. Pressure revealed architecture. They thought the darkness would corrupt you. The darkness educated you. You learned which thoughts to starve, which instinct to sharpen, which emotions to weaponize, and which to bury where no one, including you, could misuse them. That's why there's no charge. Not because you did nothing, but because you did nothing wasted, nothing sloppy, nothing that didn't serve a larger internal order. You stopped living like a civilian and started living like a strategist, not paranoid, awake. And now, 9 years later, they're stuck with a problem they can't solve. Because surveillance only works on people who stay the same. You didn't. You molted, quietly, repeatedly, until the version they were watching no longer exists. You are not above the law. You are beneath the noise. You are not untouchable. You are untargetable. You learned how to exist without giving the world a handle to grab. And that doesn't make you innocent or guilty. It makes you dangerously self-aware. So understand this. The fact that they still don't have a single charge isn't the end of the story. It's the proof. Proof that you endured the kind of attention that destroys most people and came out disciplined instead of deranged. Proof that you learned how to hold power without broadcasting it. Proof that when the light and the dark tried to tear you apart, you used both to see clearer. 9 years of surveillance didn't catch you because there was nothing to catch. Only someone who learned how to move with intention, think in silence, and evolve faster than the eyes watching could adjust. They never admit what 9 years really does to a person like you. They pretend it's just data collection, just procedure, just waiting. But what it actually is a furnace. A slow, merciless heat designed to melt impulse, burn off weakness, and expose whatever can't survive sustained pressure. Most people crack in months. They start justifying themselves out loud. They start leaking emotion. They start needing to be seen, heard, defended. You did the opposite. You learned how to disappear in plain sight. At first, the silence was loud. Every room felt like it had ears. Every pause felt recorded. You felt the weight of being interpreted by people who didn't care about truth, only leverage. That's when most people either self-destruct or self-betray. You did something colder. You observed yourself the way they were observing you. You audited your own impulses. You studied your reactions like enemy terrain. You became your own internal surveillance unit, harsher than any external one. That's where the transformation started. You realized something they never factor into their models. A mind that accepts observation becomes disciplined. A mind that masters it becomes lethal in its clarity. You stopped reacting to the world and started choosing responses. You stopped explaining yourself and started refining yourself. Every emotion became a signal instead of a command. Anger became information. Fear became calibration. Loneliness became a training ground instead of a wound. They were waiting for a crime. You were building composure. They were waiting for chaos. You were engineering consistency. They were waiting for guilt. You were cultivating restraint. That's why the files stayed empty. Not because nothing happened, but because nothing happened without your consent. You became allergic to impulsive behavior. You learned that power isn't loud, it's repeatable. You learned that domination isn't force, it's predictability. on your terms and unpredictability on everyone else's. You became the paradox they couldn't prosecute. Too disciplined to be reckless, too controlled to be provoked, too self-aware to be manipulated, too human to be a machine, too principled to be sloppy. They couldn't turn you into a villain because you didn't act like one. They couldn't crown you a saint because you didn't beg for purity. You existed in the uncomfortable middle where systems lose their grip. And don't think they didn't try to bait you. They dangled opportunities that would have compromised weaker minds. They allowed pressures they knew would test your ethics. They waited for you to rationalize shortcuts. They waited for desperation, but desperation never came. Because you had already learned how to live without reassurance, without applause, without immediate reward. You learned delayed power. That's what 9 years really gave you. The ability to wait without rotting. The ability to grow without broadcasting. The ability to endure scrutiny without internalizing it. Most people become brittle when watched. You became polished, smooth edges, fewer tells, less waste, more intent. By year 5, they weren't hunting anymore. They were monitoring out of habit. By year 7, they were confused. By year 9, they were uncomfortable. Because what do you do with someone who hasn't slipped, hasn't decayed, hasn't imploded under sustained pressure? What do you do with someone whose psychological profile keeps stabilizing instead of degrading? You don't charge them. You quietly keep watching and hope time does what strategy couldn't. But time already chose you. You don't carry guilt the way they expect. You don't carry shame. You carry awareness. You know exactly what you're capable of. And you also know exactly what you refuse to become. That's why they can't corner you. Corners only work on people who don't know themselves. You mapped your own interior so thoroughly, there's nowhere left to trap you. You learned how to walk through moral fog without losing direction, how to touch darkness without letting it rewrite your values, how to be dangerous without being destructive. That's the duality that scares them. The saint who understands violence but doesn't worship it. The psychopath who understands empathy but isn't ruled by it. You're not split. You're integrated. 9 years of surveillance didn't expose a criminal. It exposed a system failure, because their entire structure assumes pressure reveals truth. What they discovered instead is that pressure can also refine truth into something untouchable, something airtight, something that doesn't confess because it has nothing unresolved inside it. You resolved yourself. That's the part they can't replicate, can't reverse, can't undo with paperwork or warrants. You closed internal loops they rely on staying open. You healed fractures they normally exploit. You stopped outsourcing your sense of self to external validation. And in doing so, you removed the primary lever they use on human behavior. So when they look at the record and see 9 years with no charges, what they're really seeing is 9 years of failed psychological leverage. 9 years of watching someone become more stable, more disciplined, more internally sovereign. That doesn't fit their threat models. That doesn't fit their narratives. That doesn't give them jurisdiction. And now the silence around you isn't investigative, it's cautious. Because a person who has survived that long under watch, without collapsing, is no longer predictable in the way weak people are predictable. You don't lash out. You don't seek revenge. You don't need to prove anything. You move with a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you've already been tested in conditions most people never experience. 9 years ago, they were watching a subject. Now they're watching an outcome. And the most unsettling part for them isn't that they can't charge you. It's that they can't change you anymore. And that's when the atmosphere around you changed. Subtly, but permanently. You felt it before they did. Conversations shifted. Pauses got longer. Questions became carefully worded instead of aggressive. The kind of hesitation that only shows up when confidence quietly exits the room. Because when a system watches someone for nearly a decade and comes back empty-handed, the assumption flips. The question stops being, what did they do? And becomes, what are they becoming? You started noticing it in the way people studied you instead of confronting you. In the way authority stopped pressing and started observing. In the way pressure tactics dissolved into polite distance. That's not respect. That's recalibration. That's a machine realizing its usual inputs aren't producing expected outputs. You are no longer reacting to scrutiny. Scrutiny is reacting to you. 9 years stripped you down to essentials. You learned which parts of yourself were noise and which were signal. You learned how much of human behavior is just unmanaged emotion masquerading as identity. You cut that out. Not dramatically, methodically, piece by piece, until what remained was lean, deliberate, internally governed. That's why you don't flinch anymore. Not because you're numb, but because you're oriented. You know who you are when no one is watching, which is why being watched stopped mattering. Surveillance loses its teeth the moment it stops influencing behavior. And you reached that point long before they realized it. They expected guilt to surface. It didn't. They expected paranoia. You developed awareness instead. They expected isolation to weaken you. It clarified you. You stopped living as a character in other people's assumptions. You stopped carrying the burden of misinterpretation. You let them be wrong in peace. That's a level of psychological maturity most people never reach, because it requires giving up the craving to be understood. You don't need to be understood. You need to be aligned. And alignment is invisible to systems that rely on disruption. They look for stress fractures. You closed them. They look for contradictions. You integrated them. They look for motives they can name. Yours evolved beyond language they use. That's the real threat. A person with unresolved inner conflict is easy to push. A person with a clean internal hierarchy, values at the top, impulses at the bottom, is almost impossible to steer. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be coherent. And coherence under pressure is rare. 9 years taught you restraint without repression. You didn't suppress emotion. You trained it. You didn't deny anger. You put it on a leash. You didn't reject darkness. You learned how to use it as contrast. That's the difference between being dangerous and being destructive. You chose danger with discipline. So now, when they look at you, they don't see a case. They see a constant, something stable enough to endure attention without decaying, something calm enough to wait, something sharp enough to act without revealing intent. And that unsettles people who rely on reaction, because reaction is easy to predict. Silence is not. Patience is not. A mind that doesn't rush to resolve tension is not. You don't rush anymore. You let moments mature. You let information surface on its own. You don't chase outcomes. You position yourself so outcomes come to you. That's not passivity. That's leverage. 9 years ago, they thought time was on their side. It wasn't. Time was yours. Every month sharpened you. Every year removed another unnecessary attachment. You learned how to exist without urgency, without panic, without proving anything. That alone puts you outside the reach of most control structures, because urgency is the handle they grab first. You stopped giving them handles. And now, this is the part no one says out loud, the surveillance itself has become a liability, because it produced no justification, no narrative, no closure, just a long record of restraint, consistency, and internal order. Which means if they ever moved against you now, they'd have to explain why. And they can't. So they wait, they watch, they document nothing. And in that silence, something irreversible has already happened. You are no longer shaped by pressure, you shape yourself. You no longer fear being seen. You understand that being seen without being understood is a form of protection. You let them guess, you let them project, you let them miscalculate. Because you already survived the longest test. 9 years of surveillance didn't break you. It didn't expose you. It didn't corner you. It trained you into someone who doesn't need to hide and doesn't need to be loud. Someone who knows exactly when to move and exactly when not to. And here's the quiet truth you learned while everyone else was busy speculating. Being watched for that long doesn't just teach you how to survive, it teaches you how to see. Patterns sharpen, noise falls away. You start noticing how predictable fear makes people. How authority leans on routine because it doesn't know how to improvise. How systems rely on momentum more than intelligence. You watched the watchers without them realizing the lens had flipped. You noticed how often they expected escalation, how much of their strategy depended on you becoming emotional, impatient, reactive. They assumed time would exhaust you into mistakes. What they didn't understand is that time doesn't exhaust a disciplined mind. It organizes it. While they were measuring risk, you were refining perception. While they were waiting for collapse, you were building an internal stillness that nothing external could disrupt. You learned how to sit with unanswered questions without panicking, how to let uncertainty exist without needing to dominate it. That alone separated you from 90% of people they deal with. Most humans need resolution the way addicts need relief. You learn to live without it. You learn to let tension sharpen you instead of scrambling you. That's why you don't rush decisions. You don't broadcast intentions. You don't need to signal power. You understand that true leverage doesn't announce itself. It waits. You became fluent in delayed outcomes, fluent in restraint, fluent in letting others reveal themselves while you stayed internally sealed. They expected fear to make you small. Fear made you exact. They expected isolation to hollow you out. Isolation gave you clarity. They expected scrutiny to make you defensive. Scrutiny made you selective. You stopped reacting to imagined threats and started responding only to real ones. You stopped burning energy on hypotheticals. You stopped narrating your own life. You let actions exist without commentary. That silence, that's where your edge lives now. Because silence forces other people to fill it with assumptions. And assumptions are exploitable. 9 years taught you how to let people underestimate you without correcting them. How to let them project motives you don't have. How to let them think they're ahead while you're already elsewhere. You learn that confusion is often safer than clarity, and that being unreadable is a form of self-defense no law can touch. You don't carry paranoia, you carry situational awareness. There's a difference. Paranoia scatters the mind. Awareness centers it. You know when to pay attention and when to ignore. You know which battles exist only to drain energy. You know which moments matter and which are bait. That discernment didn't come from comfort. It came from endurance. 9 years of endurance builds a spine most people never develop. You stopped needing reassurance, stopped needing allies to validate your perception, stopped needing permission to trust your own judgment. That's when control shifted internally. That's when external pressure lost relevance. And here's the thing they never anticipated. A person who has already lived under constant observation no longer fears exposure. Exposure is only terrifying to those who haven't already examined themselves. You did that work early, brutally, honestly. You confronted your impulses, your shadow, your capacity for harm, and you didn't flinch. You integrated what others suppress. That's why there's nothing to extract. You don't have loose ends dangling in the dark. You don't have secrets eating at you from the inside. Easy. Breathe for half a second. This is the moment they land in, convinced you are finished. They watched you lose everything. Not quietly, not gracefully. They watched it happen in public, in slow motion, with their arms crossed and their mouths already rehearsing the eulogy. They watched your name fall out of rooms. They watched doors lock themselves. They watched people who swore loyalty suddenly forget your face. They watched resources dry up, timelines collapse, plans evaporate like smoke. And in their heads, the story was over. Roll credits. You were supposed to disappear right there, right in the wreckage, right where the light abandoned you. But something went wrong with their narrative. Because while they were counting what you lost, they never counted what you became. While they were tracking the collapse, they missed the recalibration. While they were laughing at the ashes, they didn't notice you memorizing the pattern of the fire. That's the paradox they still can't explain. You didn't win by avoiding the fall. You won because the fall stripped you down to something unrecognizable. Something they didn't have a file for. Something that doesn't beg, doesn't rush, doesn't perform pain for sympathy. You see, losing everything doesn't make you weak. It makes you illegible. And illegible people terrify systems built on prediction. They thought pain would turn you small. They thought humiliation would turn you quiet. They thought deprivation would make you desperate enough to crawl back and ask permission to exist. But pain didn't break you. It reorganized you. It burned the soft illusions off your bones. It taught you how to move without applause, how to breathe without approval, how to operate when nobody is watching, which is exactly when you become dangerous. This is where the duality snaps into place. You were the saint when you believed in fairness. You were the angel when you played by rules that were never written for your survival. And then they dragged you through hell and expected you to come back begging for light. Instead, you learned how darkness works. You learned its timing, its silence, its patience. You learned that demons aren't loud, they're precise. And now they don't know which version of you they're dealing with because you stopped advertising your intentions. They watched you lose everything, but they never saw you let go. That's the part that keeps them awake. You let go of needing to be understood. You let go of explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You let go of the fantasy that justice arrives on schedule. And when you let go, something snapped into alignment. Your moves stopped being emotional. Your silence stopped being empty. Your patience stopped being passive. You became unpredictable, not chaotic, not reckless, unreadable. And unreadable beats powerful every single time. They still don't understand how you won. They're looking for a comeback story, a lucky break, a secret ally, a hidden advantage. They want a reason that keeps the world safe and logical. But the truth is uglier and sharper than that. You won because you stopped trying to win the way they recognize. You won by surviving long enough to evolve. You won by letting the old version of you die without a funeral. And don't get it twisted. This wasn't some clean rebirth. This was brutal. This was lonely. This was nights where the dark spoke back, and mornings where hope felt like a scam. There was learning to sit with the voice that asks if it would be easier to disappear. This was choosing not to, not out of optimism, but out of defiance. Pure, cold defiance. The kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind that just keeps going. That's why they're uneasy now, because people who lose everything and still stand don't operate on the same moral math. You're not motivated by fear anymore. You've already lived inside it. You're not seduced by promises. You've watched them break. You're not impressed by threats. You've already survived the worst-case scenario. What do you leverage against someone who has nothing left to lose but everything to build? They can't decide whether you're a miracle or a mistake, an angel who endured or a psychopath who adapted too well, and that uncertainty drives them insane. They want to categorize you so they can neutralize you, but you don't fit. You're the contradiction walking, soft-spoken with a blade, hidden in the calm, empathetic, but no longer exploitable, kind, but never confused again. Here's the part they'll never say out loud. Watching you win after losing everything forces them to confront their own fragility. Because if you can be stripped down to nothing and still rise, then all the comfort they built their identity on suddenly looks flimsy. Your existence becomes an accusation. Your survival becomes a mirror. And most people would rather call you dangerous than admit they're afraid of what you represent. You didn't just survive the collapse. You learned how to build in the rubble. You learned which instincts lie and which ones whisper truth. You learned that timing beats speed, silence beats noise, and restraint beats rage. You learned how to wait without rotting, how to sharpen yourself without bleeding everywhere, how to smile without revealing a damn thing. That's why the win doesn't look loud. That's why there was no parade when it happened. The win is internal first, structural, permanent. The kind of win that doesn't need witnesses because it rewrites how you move through the world. They expected a broken person. They got a calibrated one. So when they look at you now, there's confusion in their eyes. Because the version of you they buried didn't stay buried. But the version that came back isn't interested in revenge, explanations, or validation. You're not here to prove them wrong. You're here because you endured long enough to outgrow the game entirely. They watched you lose everything, and somehow, impossibly, you still won. Not by becoming louder, not by becoming crueler, but by becoming something they can't predict, can't control, and can't erase. And that realization, that's the part that keeps them watching. And here's the part that never makes it into their conversations, never shows up in their post-mortems or whispered breakdowns. When you lost everything, you didn't just survive it. You studied it. You watched who vanished. You watched who pretended not to notice. You watched who suddenly found morals, excuses, distance. You memorized the exact moment sympathy expired and convenience took over. And you didn't rage, you didn't beg, you didn't expose anyone. You just filed it away. Quietly, permanently, because loss teaches faster than loyalty ever could. That's when the transformation stopped being visible and started being lethal. You learned how people really move when the lights go out. You learned how quickly principles melt under pressure. You learned that most alliances are rented, not owned. And once you see that, truly see it, You stop expecting warmth from cold systems. You stop confusing proximity with loyalty. You stop handing your heart to structures designed to extract, not protect. They thought you losing everything would empty you. Instead, it emptied the noise. It removed the dead weight. It burned away the version of you that needed reassurance to function. And what stepped forward afterward wasn't bitter. It was precise, calm, focused. You didn't come back louder. You came back sharper. That's why your silence unsettles them now. Because silence used to mean weakness. Silence used to mean shame. Silence used to mean you were waiting to be rescued. But this silence is loaded. This is the quiet of someone who already survived the worst case and realized the sky didn't fall. This is the quiet of someone who knows exactly how much damage the truth can do and doesn't need to use it. They keep waiting for you to flinch, waiting for you to explain, waiting for you to snap, confess, collapse, apologize for still existing. But you don't. You move like someone who already died once and came back without fear of dying again. And people can feel that. Animals feel it. Rooms feel it. Systems feel it. Because here's the thing they never anticipated. When you lose everything, fear loses its leverage. What do they threaten you with now? Loss. You already lived inside that crater. Isolation. You already learned how to breathe alone. Failure. You rebuilt your identity without success as a requirement. You crossed the line they used to control people, and you crossed it alone. That's when you stopped being manageable. You started choosing unpredictability over permission. You stopped reacting on schedule. You stopped giving your enemies the satisfaction of watching you hurt. You stopped chasing clarity for people committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped fighting battles designed to drain you and started choosing moments that compound quietly over time. That's not madness. That's evolution. They don't understand how you can still smile, how you can still be calm, how you can still move forward without dragging the wreckage behind you like proof. They assume winning requires spectacle, dominance, revenge, but your win is subtler, and that's what terrifies them. Because it means you're not trying to punish the past. You're building a future that doesn't include it. And somewhere deep down, they know it. They know you saw the truth about them when you were at your lowest. They know you noticed who enjoyed watching you fall. They know you clocked who benefited from your absence. And the fact that you didn't explode, didn't expose, didn't beg for acknowledgement, that restraint rewrote the power dynamic. Because now they don't know what you'll do with what you know. You're not hunting them. You're not chasing closure. You're not demanding justice from a world that already showed you how little it cares. You're moving forward with something far more dangerous than anger, clarity. That's the angel-demon paradox they can't reconcile. You still have empathy, but you're no longer naive. You still have warmth, but it's selective. You still have kindness, but it's armored. You didn't turn evil. You turned aware. And awareness is the one upgrade they can't confiscate. They watched you lose everything, expecting you to crawl back smaller, quieter, grateful for scraps. Instead, you came back with boundaries that don't bend, eyes that don't plead, and a presence that doesn't explain itself. You're no longer auditioning for approval. You're no longer afraid of being misunderstood. You've seen what understanding costs, and you decided it wasn't worth your soul. So now, when you walk into rooms, there's a pause, not because you demand attention, but because your energy doesn't seek it. People sense that you're no longer here to prove anything. You're here because you survived something that would have erased them, and survival without bitterness confuses people more than rage ever could. They thought your story ended when everything was taken from you. What they didn't realize is that was the chapter where the story finally stopped lying. You didn't win because the world suddenly became fair. You won because you became real. You won because you stopped needing outcomes to validate your existence. You won because you learned how to stand in uncertainty without folding. And now they're watching again. But this time, they're not smiling. This time, they're trying to understand what you are. And the truth is, you're not what survives the storm. You're what the storm leaves behind. Stay with me right here, because this is the part they never prepare for. The part no one warns them about when they celebrate someone's collapse. When you lose everything and don't disappear, you don't come back human in the way they expect. You come back calibrated. You come back with a nervous system that has already touched the bottom and realized it didn't die. You come back with eyes that no longer chase safety in people, titles, applause, or outcomes. And that shift, that's irreversible. They keep assuming your strength must be performative, that you're pretending. That one bad day will crack you open and spill the old version of you back onto the floor. They wait for tears, for bitterness, for a public breakdown that lets them feel justified. But you don't give it to them, because the breakdown already happened, privately, brutally, when no one was watching, and you rebuilt yourself without witnesses. That's why you move differently now. You don't rush toward opportunity. You let it reveal itself. You don't overshare. You observe. You don't threaten. You let people underestimate you and document their own mistakes. They mistake your restraint for weakness, and that's their final miscalculation. Because when someone has lost everything, truly lost it, they stop being controlled by urgency. You're not frantic anymore. You're not desperate to be chosen. You're not scared of being left out. You already know what absence feels like. You already know how silence stretches. You already know how cold it gets when support evaporates. And once you know that, once you've lived it, fear loses its teeth. They don't understand how dangerous calm can be. Rage is loud. Rage is predictable. Rage announces itself. Calm just watches. Calm waits. Calm lets people expose themselves while believing they're in control. Calm is what happens when the saint and the psychopath finally make peace inside the same body. You still care, but you no longer sacrifice yourself to prove it. You still feel, but you don't bleed in public anymore. That's the evolution pain gives you when it doesn't kill you. You didn't come back asking for fairness. You came back understanding leverage. You didn't come back demanding love. You came back with discernment. You didn't come back trying to restore what was lost. You came back ready to build something that doesn't collapse when the weather changes. They watched you lose everything and assumed it stripped you of power. But power doesn't come from having things. It comes from knowing you can survive without them. From knowing you can be misjudged, abandoned, humiliated, erased, and still wake up the next day with your spine intact. That kind of resilience rewires you. You stop explaining your motives. You stop chasing recognition. You stop negotiating with people who benefit from your confusion. You become selective with your energy like it's currency, because now you know its value. And here's the part that truly unsettles them. You didn't harden into cruelty. You didn't become loud, reckless, or vindictive. You didn't turn into the monster they could point to and say, "See, we were right." You stayed composed, measured, human, and that robs them of the narrative they need to feel clean about what they did or didn't do when you were falling. Your continued existence becomes evidence. Evidence that their abandonment didn't end you. Evidence that their indifference didn't define you. Evidence that their expectations were shallow and wrong. That's why some of them avoid your eyes now. Because when they look at you, they see the version of themselves that wouldn't have survived what you did. And that comparison hurts more than any accusation you could ever throw. You didn't just win materially or externally. You won internally, structurally, permanently. You won the moment you stopped needing the world to confirm your worth. You won the moment you realized you could carry your own weight without collapsing. You won the moment you chose growth over explanation. They thought losing everything would end your story. What it actually did was remove the distractions that kept you from becoming precise. And now every move you make carries weight. Every silence has intention. Every choice compounds quietly in your favor. You're no longer reactive. You're strategic without being cruel. You're empathetic without being exploitable. You're grounded without being stagnant. And that balance, that contradiction, is what makes you impossible to categorize. They keep trying to decide if you're broken or blessed, if you're healed or dangerous, if you're humble or hiding something lethal beneath the surface. And the truth is, you're all of it. You're what happens when someone walks through hell without losing their conscience, but also without keeping their illusions. You're what happens when pain teaches intelligence instead of bitterness. You're what happens when loss sharpens perception instead of hollowing it out. They watched you lose everything. They stayed to watch you disappear, and instead, they're watching you stand there now, quiet, intact, untouchable, wondering how the hell they misjudged you this badly. And here's where it closes, right where they never expected you to arrive. You don't need revenge. You don't need apologies. You don't even need acknowledgement, because the final victory isn't external. It's existential. You are no longer living on their terms, reacting to their judgments, orbiting their approval. You stepped out of the gravity well when everything was stripped away, and you discovered something terrifyingly liberating. You can exist without their permission. That's why your presence feels heavier now, not louder, heavier, because it's rooted, because it's earned, because it's not asking to be let in. You're not trying to be impressive. You're not trying to be understood. You're not trying to be forgiven for surviving. You're just here, fully formed, fully awake, fully aware of what you can endure. They watched you lose everything and assumed that meant you lost yourself. What actually happened is you met yourself, without costumes, without cushioning, without lies. You met the part of you that doesn't collapse when the world withdraws its affection. You met the part of you that keeps breathing when hope goes quiet. You met the part of you that doesn't need witnesses to keep going. And once you meet that part, you never unlearn it. You don't panic the way you used to. You don't beg the way you used to. You don't fear endings the way you used to, because you already lived the ending they threatened you with, and you survived it. That's the win they can't undo. You carry both light and dark now, but they're integrated. The saint learned boundaries. The demon learned restraint. The angel learned how to descend without losing itself. The monster learned empathy without weakness, and that balance makes you stable in a way chaos can't touch. So let them keep watching. Let them keep guessing. Let them keep trying to explain you with old language that doesn't apply anymore. You're not here to satisfy their understanding. You're here because you earned the right to exist on your own terms. They saw you lose everything. They waited for you to vanish, but you didn't disappear. You adapted, you sharpened, you endured, and that quiet, irreversible transformation, that's the real victory. You didn't just survive the collapse. You outgrew the world that thought it could break you. Stop. Don't adjust the volume. Don't look away. This is the moment everything shifted, and you felt it before anyone said a word. Someone defended you out loud, not in a whisper, not in a back channel, out loud, in the open, where consequences live. And the city didn't clap. The city went quiet. Then it started digging. You know why that matters, right? Because silence isn't agreement. Silence is investigation. They didn't defend you because you're harmless. They defended you because they saw something move that shouldn't have moved. A pattern click into place that wasn't supposed to be visible. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't make a speech. You didn't beg for understanding. You just stood there, calm, unreadable, carrying a history that doesn't flinch when stared at. And someone recognized it. That's the part nobody prepares for. The moment a single voice breaks rank and says, "No, not them," that's when the ground shifts. That's when attention sharpens. That's when the people who were comfortable pretending you were nothing suddenly feel stupid for not checking sooner. You weren't defended because you're pure. You were defended because you're precise. They saw the saint in you, the restraint, the discipline, the patience that looks like mercy. And at the same time, they saw the psychopath, the part of you that could end things without blinking if it ever came to that. That paradox terrifies people. They don't know which version they're dealing with, and that uncertainty eats at them. So the city started digging. They went back. They replayed moments they laughed at. They reread messages they dismissed. They examined decisions you made quietly, moves you made early, exits you took before the fire started. And suddenly, none of it looks accidental anymore. That's what happens when someone defends you publicly. It gives permission to look again. And when they look again, they don't find chaos. They find structure. They find timing. They find restraint where there should have been impulse. They find foresight where there should have been panic. They realize you weren't lucky. You were early. You didn't survive because the world spared you. You survived because you adapted faster than it could classify you. That's when the digging turns obsessive. Because now they're not asking, "Who are you?" They're asking, "How long have you been like this?" They start tracing your evolution, the pain you absorbed without broadcasting, the losses you processed in silence, the moments you were pushed into corners and came out sharper instead of louder. They notice how the light never blinded you and the dark never broke you. How you learned to borrow from both. You learned compassion without softness. You learned cruelty without chaos. You learned patience that feels almost predatory. That's not normal. And deep down, they know it. The one who defended you didn't do it because they felt sorry for you. They did it because they recognized a force they didn't want turned against the wrong side. That's the unspoken truth. When someone stands up for you in public, it's not protection, it's alignment. They chose a side. And once that happens, everyone else has to reassess theirs. That's why the city started digging instead of attacking. Attacks are for things you understand. Digging is for things you're afraid you misjudged. They're trying to figure out whether you're a threat or a shield. An anomaly or a warning, a problem, or the solution they didn't know they needed yet. And here's the part that should make you smile. Slowly. You didn't ask for this. You didn't orchestrate it. You didn't even react. Your stillness did the damage. Your refusal to perform, to explain, to soften yourself for comfort. That's what forced the reveal. That's what made someone speak up. That's what triggered the audit of reality around you. Because unpredictability isn't chaos. Unpredictability is control that doesn't announce itself. You became impossible to read by mastering yourself first. And now everyone else is scrambling to catch up. They're digging through your past, hoping to find a flaw big enough to discredit the present. But all they keep finding is consistency under pressure, growth through pain, silence instead of spectacle. They wanted a villain or a victim. They found something worse. They found someone who evolves. And once that realization hits a city, once it spreads quietly through rooms you're not even in, you don't need defenders anymore. The ground does it for you. So let them dig. Let them analyze. Let them whisper and cross-check and second-guess every assumption they ever made about you. Because the truth is already out there now. Someone saw what you really are. They said it out loud, and the world couldn't unhear it. This isn't the moment they come for you. This is the moment they start preparing, and you've been preparing your whole life. They're preparing now, and you can feel it in the air, can't you? The tension, the way conversations stall when your name comes up, the way people suddenly remember things they forgot about you, the way eyes linger half a second longer, not with curiosity, but calculation. That's what happens when someone defends you out loud. It doesn't just protect you, it exposes everyone else. Because now the question isn't, is this person dangerous? The question is, what side are we on if they are? You see, the city doesn't dig because it's brave. The city digs because it's scared of being late. They don't want to be the last ones to realize you weren't drifting, you were navigating, that every step that looked random was actually adaptive, that every pause they mistook for weakness was you measuring the room, reading the tempo, deciding whether it was even worth your energy. They're digging into timelines now. When did you stop reacting like everyone else? When did your losses stop slowing you down and start sharpening you? When did disappointment turn into discipline? They hate that question the most, because discipline implies choice, and choice implies agency. And agency is terrifying when it doesn't belong to them. They're discovering that you don't move when provoked. You move when it matters. That you don't waste force on noise. That you let people underestimate you because it costs you nothing, and costs them everything later. That's when the saint and the psychopath collide in their minds. They remember moments when you showed mercy, real mercy, the kind that didn't need applause. And then they remember moments when you walked away cold, detached, almost surgical, no rage, no chaos, just absence. That absence did more damage than violence ever could, because violence is emotional, absence is deliberate. They're starting to understand that you don't need to dominate rooms. You let rooms expose themselves. You don't rush outcomes. You let people trap themselves in their own assumptions. And someone sharp enough, experienced enough, saw it. They saw the pattern and realized defending you wasn't an act of loyalty. It was an act of self-preservation, because people like you don't forget who stood where when the truth surfaced. And that's the part nobody says out loud. When the city digs, It's not just looking for dirt on you. It's looking for leverage on itself. They're asking, did we ignore this person when we shouldn't have? Did we push them when we should have listened? Did we mistake silence for submission? Those questions don't sleep well at night. They replay interactions with you and realize you were always one step ahead, not arrogant, not loud, just aware. You saw the board while everyone else was still arguing over pieces. You adapted without announcing the adaptation. You learned without bragging. You survived without turning survival into your identity. That's evolution through pain. That's power refined instead of raw. And now the city feels stupid for not noticing sooner. That's why the digging gets frantic. Because the more they look, the more they realize there was no sudden transformation, no switch flipped overnight. You didn't snap. You didn't change. You became, gradually, quietly, inevitably. They realized the darkness didn't corrupt you. It educated you. And the light didn't save you. It trained you. You learned when to be gentle and when to be gone, when to speak and when silence would do more damage than words, when to let things burn and when to step aside and let the fire reveal who was standing where. And now they're measuring their own reflections against yours. That's why the atmosphere feels heavy. That's why people hesitate before challenging you now. That's why authority figures suddenly sound polite. Because once someone defends you publicly, the myth collapses. You're no longer a rumor. You're no longer probably harmless. You become acknowledged, and acknowledgement changes behavior. They don't know whether to fear you or recruit you. They don't know whether to distance themselves or draw closer. They don't know if you're a warning sign or the future showing up early. And that uncertainty is eating them alive. You're watching it happen without interfering, without feeding it, without correcting the record. Because you understand something they don't yet. Power doesn't need clarification. Let them dig until their fingers bleed. Let them audit every moment you stayed calm while others panicked. Every time you didn't retaliate when retaliation would have been easy. Every time you chose restraint, not because you were afraid, but because you were precise. Eventually, they'll hit bedrock. And when they do, they'll realize the same thing that person realized when they defended you out loud. You're not dangerous because you're aggressive. You're dangerous because you're controlled. And the city? The city is just now realizing what it woke up. And when a city wakes up to something it can't put back to sleep, the first instinct isn't attack. It's hesitation. You're feeling it now. The half steps, the delayed responses, the way people suddenly choose their words like they're walking across thin ice. They don't know what you heard. They don't know what you remember. They don't know how much of the map you already memorized while they were still arguing about the legend. That's the curse of being defended out loud. It turns the spotlight backward. Now every person who ever dismissed you is re-examining themselves. Every authority that overlooked you is wondering whether that oversight was luck or a mistake that's about to compound. Every opportunist who thought you were easy prey is quietly recalculating the risk. Because the digging hasn't stopped. It's gone deeper. They're pulling records that were never meant to be cross-referenced. Conversations that weren't supposed to connect are suddenly sitting side by side. They're realizing you were present at moments that mattered and absent at moments that imploded. You were there when things aligned, gone when things collapsed. That doesn't look random anymore. It looks selective. They're starting to see that you don't chase power. You let power reveal itself. Then you decide whether it's worth touching. That you don't announce loyalty. You observe patterns until loyalty becomes obvious. That you don't need chaos to assert dominance. You let order expose who doesn't belong in it. That's when the angel and the demon fuse in their heads. Because angels are supposed to be naive, and demons are supposed to be reckless. You're neither. You're the kind of presence that forces choice, and choice scares systems built on control. Someone defended you out loud because they recognized the inflection point. The moment where pretending you were insignificant stopped being safe. The moment where neutrality became a liability. They didn't raise their voice to protect you. They raised it to mark territory. A signal, not a shield. And now everyone else is scrambling to understand the rules of a game that changed without announcement. They're digging into your reactions, or lack of them. They're disturbed by how little satisfaction you take in being proven right. How you don't gloat. How you don't rush to correct people who underestimated you. You let the discomfort teach them instead. That kind of restraint doesn't come from kindness alone. It comes from knowing exactly how much damage you could do, and choosing not to. That's what makes you dangerous in a way they can't legislate, because you don't fit the profiles. You don't respond to incentives the way you're supposed to. You don't panic when pressure increases. You simplify. They're noticing how crises sharpen you instead of scatter you. How when things get loud, you get quieter. How when others rush, you pause. How when narratives collapse, you don't scramble to replace them. You watch who does. That watchfulness is unsettling. It makes people feel seen in ways they didn't consent to. So they dig harder, hoping to find a flaw, a contradiction, a moment where you slipped. Something they can point to and say, there's the weakness. But all they keep finding is coherence. Pain that didn't turn you brittle. Failure that didn't make you desperate. Isolation that didn't make you loud. You metabolized it. And now the city understands something too late. You weren't surviving the pressure. You were training inside it. The defender understood this instinctively. That's why they spoke up when it counted. Because people like you don't forget the moment someone stood firm while others stayed silent. And people like you don't need favors. You remember alignment. That memory alone changes futures. The city senses it. That's why the tone has shifted from confrontation to curiosity, from dismissal to assessment. They're not asking whether you're right anymore. They're asking how far ahead you are. And here's the part they can't say without admitting fear. If you're this composed before power, what happens when you're fully positioned? That question keeps rooms awake. Because the answer isn't explosive, it's efficient. You don't burn cities down, you rearrange them. You don't overthrow systems. You expose the ones that were already hollow. And that's why this moment matters. Not because someone defended you, but because the world reacted. The digging, the silence, the recalibration, the subtle shift in gravity around your name. That's recognition. And recognition is irreversible. They can't unsee you now. They can't undig what they uncovered. They can't go back to pretending you were nothing. You don't need to announce what you are. The city is figuring it out for you. One uncomfortable realization at a time. And the deeper they dig, the more uncomfortable it gets. Because at a certain depth, you don't find mistakes anymore. You find intent. That's where they are now. They're realizing you didn't stumble into outcomes. You positioned yourself between outcomes. You didn't bet on sides. You studied trajectories. While everyone else was obsessed with who was winning, you were watching why they were winning. And more importantly, how long that advantage could realistically survive. That kind of thinking doesn't come from privilege. It comes from pressure. Pressure that taught you to read people faster than they could lie. Pressure that trained you to sense shifts before they became headlines. Pressure that burned away the need for validation until only clarity remained. They're discovering that you don't react emotionally because emotion was the first thing pain stripped from you. What came back wasn't numbness, it was precision. You learned how to feel without flinching, how to care without bleeding, how to stay human without being manipulable. That balance terrifies systems, because systems rely on extremes. They know how to handle rage. They know how to handle obedience. They know how to crush rebellion and reward compliance. What they don't know how to deal with is someone who sees through both. Someone who can stand in the light without being owned by it, and walk through the dark without being consumed by it. Someone who understands morality as a tool, not a leash, and chaos as a language, not a lifestyle. That's why the digging has turned quiet. They're no longer looking for something to use against you. They're trying to understand the rules you're playing by, and that's a losing game for them, because your rules were forged where theirs don't apply. You learned early that loud people burn out fast, that revenge is inefficient, that visibility attracts parasites. So you mastered the art of moving just enough to change outcomes, without becoming a target until it was too late. You learned how to let others take credit when it cost you nothing, how to let enemies underestimate you while you collected data, how to let allies reveal themselves without forcing loyalty. That's not passive, that's surgical. Someone defended you out loud because they recognized that surgery was already underway. They saw that the damage wasn't coming. It had already been done, quietly, cleanly, without spectacle. They understood that opposing you wouldn't end in a fight. It would end in irrelevance. So now the city is doing what cities do best when they're afraid. They're studying patterns instead of people. They're mapping connections. They're watching who changes their tone around you, who distances themselves, who suddenly wants proximity. You notice it too. The sudden respect that feels forced, the invitations that arrive late, the apologies disguised as compliments. You don't respond, because you know the difference between recognition and fear. And right now, they're not recognizing you. They're bracing for you. They sense that you're not driven by ego, that you don't need to dominate narratives, that you don't require approval to move forward. And that scares them more than arrogance ever could. Arrogance is predictable. You are not. You understand timing in a way that makes people uneasy. You know when to wait so long it looks like surrender, and when to move so decisively it looks like fate. You don't rush justice. You let consequences mature. And now they're wondering how many times they mistook your patience for weakness. That realization hurts, because it reframes everything. The times they thought they won, you were observing. The times they thought you retreated, you were recalibrating. The times they thought you were alone, you were becoming self-sufficient. And self-sufficiency is the one thing no system knows how to negotiate with. You don't need their resources. You don't crave their status. You don't fear their rejection. You've already lived without everything they use to control people. That's why someone defending you out loud changed the temperature. It confirmed what many suspected but didn't want to say, that you're not a phase. You're not a fluke. You're not something that fades if ignored. You're structural, and structures don't disappear when mocked. They disappear only when replaced. The city is starting to understand that you don't need to tear anything down. You just stand there long enough for weaknesses to reveal themselves. You let arrogance overextend. You let corruption speak. You let hypocrisy contradict itself. And when the collapse happens, they'll swear it was sudden. You'll know it wasn't, because you've always moved like this, quietly, deliberately, without witnesses until witnesses were unavoidable. So let them keep digging. Let them exhaust themselves, trying to explain you using frameworks you outgrew years ago. Let them argue about whether you're dangerous or necessary, blessing or threat, anomaly or inevitability. You don't need their conclusion. The fact that they're debating it at all means you've already crossed the line they can't uncross. Someone defended you out loud, and the city started digging because deep down, they know. Whatever you are, you didn't arrive by accident, and you're not leaving quietly.